fact that Fayetteville has this military history, and not only military past, but military present, and saturated in this military outlook, to have a major peace rally come right here, right to the belly of the beast, so to speak, is exciting and a little scary.
Never in the history of the United States have there been so many military families speaking out against a military operation, and I think that speaks to just how horrendous this invasion and occupation of Iraq is.
So, there's almost 80 people from this community who've lost a loved one in the war. So when people ask me, why would you have an anti-war demonstration in Fayetteville? I tell them I can think of 80 reasons. And every one of those reasons has a name, every one of them has a tombstone, because every one of them has lost their life in a war that doesn't really benefit any of us.
I come here today as an ex-airborne combat medic, an ex-drill sergeant in the United States Army, and I wear the 44th Medical Brigade combat patch. Fort Bragg is the home of the 44th Medical Brigade.
We were on that border on March 20th, and we crossed that line, and we served in this war, and we've come home to tell the truth. To tell that this war is not in our best interest, that our lives and the lives of our friends are being wasted in Iraq. My grandmother moved here from Nashville, North Carolina, so I have deep roots here. I have uncles that fought in World War II. I have a grandfather who fought in World War I. I love my country very much, and that's the reason I'm standing up today.
I'm here today because obviously I have political beliefs that make me opposed to this war, but more so because I'm asking the American people to demand of their government that we have a discussion on this issue. And I don't want people to feel like if you come out and you speak against it, or you even ask a question, that somehow you're betraying my husband, that somehow you're betraying our soldiers. It's healthy to have a discussion.
I am so happy to be in the midst of these military families who I think have been misused by the Bush administration the same way that 9/11 families have been misused. And to know that the things they have seen and the things they have done in this war, not only in Afghanistan but in Iraq, are going to be with them forever, the same way that those images of September 11th, I still see them every day. And PTSD, I have it, and it's forever. So this is who I am now, and this is who they are now. So we need each other to support each other, and it's very helpful to be here for my own recovery. And I'm here today with these military families who I love as kind of a reality check to ask the question, how did we get from September 11th to today? How did we get from an attack by a bunch of fanatics from Saudi Arabia to a point 3.5 years later where we are occupying a country that had nothing to do with September 11th, that posed absolutely no threat to my country?
The President and the government of the United States took a tragedy and used that tragedy to justify an agenda that's damaging not only to the rest of the world but also to our country.
This conflict is about powerful people having agendas and having the ability through their position to push forward their agenda. This isn't about the defense of the United States of America, defense of our borders, keeping me safe and my family safe. That's not what this is. This is something totally different.
I was in the same war in 1991 that is still going on today. And since then, Operation Desert Storm veterans have died. 11,000 Desert Storm veterans are dead. 250,000 of them get a check like me for undiagnosed illnesses from exposure to depleted uranium. They're using it on the battlefield this time, and soldiers are returning with malignancies, and they're returning with cancers and having birth deformities that resemble babies that were born after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This is happening on the battlefield right now and has been going on for 15 years.
I was there for approximately 3 months. Before I was medevaced out, I was diagnosed with PTSD and major depression. The diagnosis came when I undertook we partook in killing of innocent civilians. So being a witness to that and actually partaking in the killing of innocent civilians led to my discharge.
We all keep hearing about the rise of the insurgency and that the lack of patriotism back home can cause this rise in insurgency and keep on fueling the fire. I say that's hogwash. I'll tell you where the insurgencies came from. The insurgents came from the first time that the 25-year-old young Iraqi male saw his brother being killed needlessly by the Marine Corps. That's where the insurgents came from. If the Marine Corps can answer this question to me, then I'll take back every stance that I've taken upon this war. My question to the Marine Corps is, how can you label a 6-year-old child with a bullet hole in its head an insurgent? When they can answer that, then I'll quit talking.
Yes, horrible things have happened in Iraq. Yes, myself and my friends have taken innocent lives in Iraq. But the ultimate blame does not lie on us. It lies on the people who have put us in those situations. Those people in our government who have forced us to make these decisions. Decisions that are being made in a war that is unjust and wrong. A war that is being fought over oil, not for democracy.
I went to Iraq in December of 2003, and I sat in people's homes, and they opened up their home and gave me tea. We sat and talked. I talked to Sunnis, I talked to Shia, I talked to Kurds, I talked to secularists. And one thing it did more than anything for me is drive home just how much we all are the same. And that people really just want to live in peace. They want to be able to take care of their family. They want to be able to put food on the table. They want their life to have some kind of meaning. And that's no different than me, you, or anybody else. And leaders will take fear, and that's what's happening here. Take fear and use it to forward their own agendas. And what we have to do is not be afraid.
My son is in the military right now. He's in the 82nd Airborne Army. He's currently serving his second deployment in Iraq. He's in Mosul. After being there that full year, during the conversations we had while he was there, because he would call me about every 6 weeks via satellite phone, and we would talk, and he said, there are no weapons of mass destruction here. This is nothing about terrorism. And he has continued to say, this is ridiculous because we're dying and being injured, to put money in a few people's pockets, and it has nothing to do with anything other than that.
It's almost 2 years long, and we've accomplished nothing but Halliburton continue to get richer and richer. How is it that Halliburton can make $9 billion and you spend $250 million on workforce development programs? What's wrong with this picture? What happened to taking care of home first? Why don't we take care of home first? People are dying every day here in the United States because we don't have health care for everybody. People are making decisions, older people, do I buy medicine or do I buy food?
What we're experiencing in the United States is the loss of good jobs, the loss of jobs that pay good wages and benefits. And in the United States, the cost of education, even in the public system, has skyrocketed. And then there's the military, and there are recruiters that are there in high schools, especially in poor and working class communities, saying, you want college, you want an education, you want a future, you want job training, we have it all. And it won't cost you a penny. In fact, we'll pay you.
I joined the same National Guard unit that my grandfather joined in the mid-1930s and that my father joined in the mid-1960s. And when I was 18, my dad drove me to the recruiter's office, and I signed all the paperwork in one afternoon and got a physical, and that's what I was involved with for the next 6 years. Military is the only job in this country that if you quit, they put you in jail. And that's what they did to my son. But through the help of people in the peace movement and activists like the folks in this room, he's now discharged. And instead of contributing to the war machine, he's now contributing to the peace machine. I'm as proud of him for doing that as I was when he joined the military.
I haven't seen my son in over a year, and he just got discharged from the Navy. He had gone AWOL. This has finally come to an end, and I'm ecstatic because it's been stressful. It's such an emotional thing when your child is, when you don't know. And he's here, and it's behind him, and now he can talk. He can actually speak his mind and not be prosecuted, and geez Louise.
I struggled with it a lot for a couple of years and eventually just decided that I was absolutely not going to continue to do what the Navy wanted me to do. That was regardless of how I got out, that getting out was the right thing to do. So August the 6th of last year, I deserted, and then went back in February to deal with that up in Great Lakes, Illinois, and just got out yesterday. For the last 3 years, I've been working and contributing to an organization dedicated to the exact polar opposite of what I personally believe is right. And I no longer have that obligation. Now I'm out here actively working to make the world a better place, with no one trying to stop me from doing that. And that is a really good feeling.
There are people down here that are trying to make a difference, and not to lose faith in the American people. We're struggling, but it's a slow step-by-step process.
There are many of our young soldiers over there who are against this war, who don't want to be there, who don't want to be doing what they're doing, but they are afraid to speak out. They're concerned about repercussions for themselves, for their loved ones. But I think it's important for people to know that, you know, there is an incredible anti-war movement, not just outside of the military, but also from within. And even though they may not be members of Iraq Vets Against the War or any of the formal groups yet, they're there and they're talking about it.
I stand here now to say that the people who support us are those who will be at this rally tomorrow in Fayetteville. Those who will be at these 800 plus rallies across this country. That is how you support the troops, by demanding that we are not used in this war in Iraq.
They're not going to take my son's face off of this war. Not as long as this mother is breathing, and not as long as many other mothers are breathing. And I just want them to know that being an anti-war mom doesn't mean that I don't support them. What it means is that I do support you, and I do love you, and I'm doing everything in my power to keep you safe because you're keeping me safe. And I'm not going to stop. Cindy's not going to stop. Sue's not going to stop. Fernando's not going to stop. None of us are going to stop until this stupid, senseless war is over and our troops that we love, that we support, are back home.
We are not disrespecting the troops. We are doing what we know how to do to show our love and support for them. We are here to say, support the troops, bring them home now.
I'm here in North Carolina this weekend, and to use the word anniversary sounds almost wrong, to mark the end of the second year of this awful tragedy in Iraq. My son Nick was 26 years old. He had a radio tower service company. He had just started it a couple years before he went to Iraq. He went to Iraq in December of 2004 to find a contract. He went by the invitation, in fact, encouragement, and beyond encouragement, almost recruitment of the Department of Defense and the State Department and the Iraqi Business Chamber of Commerce. He was arrested by Iraqi police on March the 24th. They immediately turned him over to the American military in Mosul, Iraq. They called in the FBI, and between the FBI and the military, they saw fit to detain him illegally without any of his due process rights for 13 days. At the end of about 12 days, I filed a writ of habeas corpus, and he was released the next day. When he was released, he went back to Baghdad and tried to get home, but he was kidnapped. He was taken off a bus by force, and we don't know what happened to him after that. That was April the 10th, and on May the 10th, I got a phone call from the State Department telling me that his mutilated body had been found hanging from an overpass on a highway outside of Baghdad. And the next day, supposedly, I don't know if this is true or not, but they say it was Al-Qaeda that released a website with a videotape of my son's murder, which was quite brutal. And that became world knowledge immediately, and added to the sorrow and the loss of a wonderful human being. I specifically begged the FBI during interviews where they were getting information from me to help them track down whoever murdered my son. I said, not in my name do I want you to go out and level some village or shoot anybody or kill anybody in order to catch the people who murdered my son. I do want them caught, but I don't want life to be lost in that process. My in-laws and a lot of other people have said that they won't rest easy until they kill all those bastards. And I can't go out and promote peace unless I have peace in my own heart. And when people die, the people that they leave behind are injured forever after. And many of those people are going to react in a very negative and violent way. And so the cycle goes on and on and on. And what we have to do right now is to break that cycle. And we have to resist our government and resist this immoral war.
This is an exhibit that we call Make Your Own History, and it documents a GI anti-war movement that was based in Fort Bragg during the Vietnam War, and which was very active and very vocal. Here is one of the very first issues, it may be the first issue, of something called Bragg Briefs, which soon became kind of a tabloid. And they had a protest. This is from November of 1969. This is a peace march in Fayetteville in October of 1969, which was a pretty big deal. People who were among the spokespeople, the activists, the leaders of this group, they kept getting transferred to places like Alaska and stuff, so it was tough to keep things going. He'd been raised Unitarian, and there was a small Unitarian group in Fayetteville at the time. He went to the group and said, I want to be a conscientious objector, will you help me? And these folks thought about it, and they said no. They were all pretty much military connected, and they didn't want to stick their necks out. But there was a fellow meeting with the group who had been raised Quaker. There wasn't any Quaker group here at the time. And he heard about it and said to Dean Holland, kind of on the sly, look, if you can get to Chapel Hill, which is about 2 hours up the road, there's a Quaker meeting up there, and they'll help you. And so he did. He actually hitchhiked to Chapel Hill. And as Quakers tend to do, and faced with a dire emergency, they scrambled around and formed a committee. And they did help him out, and he did succeed in becoming a conscientious objector. But in the process, they discovered, Fayetteville, that there were lots of unhappy GIs here. They didn't all necessarily want to be conscientious objectors, but they didn't like the war in Vietnam. They didn't like the way the Army was treating them. And they were doing things like putting these papers together. And so out of this process came Quaker House as a project to do something related and useful with soldiers at Fort Bragg who were uneasy about the war. In May of 1970, they had a big peace rally in the park, which is behind the house where we're now standing, where we're also going to have our peace rally on the 19th. They had a peace rally in that same park in May of 1970, and that's Jane Fonda, and estimates range from 2,000 to 4,000 people turned out there. It looks pretty full. A lot of GIs, a lot of other people. And this was something. This was quite something. And 3 nights later, the Quaker House was firebombed in the middle of the night. Here it is in April, about a month before the firebombing. Quaker House, the catalyst for local dissent. Well, okay, there's a picture of the house. Then the daily paper report on Jane Fonda's appearance at this rally. Fayetteville angered by protests. Are they painting crosshairs on us or what? And sure enough, the house was firebombed. You probably can't see this picture very well. It's a copy of a copy of a copy. There was no real investigation of it was clearly arson They actually held Quaker meeting for worship, the silent worship, on folding chairs out in the grass in front of the building through the summer months. A previous director filed requests under the Freedom of Information Act asking for documents relating to spying on Quaker House, and he got stuff back. This, the one with all the black marks, this is an FBI internal memo about the firebombing of Quaker House. We know it's about that because that's what it says at the top, and you'll see everything else in the memo is blacked out. Makes you ask the old question, what did they know and when did they know it? These are Army intelligence reports written by undercover agents who infiltrated meetings at Quaker House, where people were gathering to put together Bragg briefs and to plan protests and things. They make good historical documents because they name names and they talk about what was going on. And it makes me smile in a way because, as intrusive as it was, they discovered that what people were doing here was trying to exercise their right of free speech, trying to exercise their right of free association. There's nothing in here about plans for terrorism or violence or anything like that. They were doing all American stuff. Nonetheless, they were spied upon. We don't know if they're spying on us now. We just sort of assume that there's some kind of surveillance. A group of officers at Fort Bragg actually got together and wrote this little statement against the Vietnam War and signed it and published it in the Fayetteville Daily Paper. That's pretty shocking from a military perspective. And then that ad circulated around. This is pre-internet and everything, but it circulated around the country, and about 100 more officers signed it. It's basically the same statement, but this one was published in the Washington Post. At Fort Bragg, a group of them got together, called themselves the Concerned Officers Movement, and they actually put out a newsletter. We only found one issue of it, and the group didn't last very long. They were all sort of pushed out of the military real quick once they surfaced here. So the Concerned Officers Movement was just sort of a flash, but I think it rattled a lot of cages at the Pentagon. This whole episode, this whole experience that we've tried to document here has been completely erased from local memory.
Papers that are being handed out is the reason why we've gathered here today, and we'll be gathering for the rest of the weekend. All right, there will be a march down to Rowan Park tomorrow. It is in support of the troops and speaking out on the occupation in Iraq, as well as making sure that we understand that there are things here in America that need to be done. And hip-hop is a definite voice for making it happen.
Lives for dividends in this land filled with sin, who will be left to win. Using tragedy as diversion so we don't focus in to see your evil dealings. Blaming, claiming, and shaming all that we believe in because we believe in peace. We believe in justice. We believe in freedom. We believe in unity, but all you see is money and power scared cowards who really booked the Twin Towers. This country is supposed to be ours. Democratic fallacy defiling all this country is supposed to be, but despite what you pretend to be, blinded eyes do see. And in all this treachery, blinded eyes do cry, and silent mouths still ask why, and innocent people still die. So war, what is it really good for? So war, who is it really good for?
If you want to know today's mathematics, then all you got to do is count backwards. It's been more than 4 years and 4 planes later, 3,000 lives and 2 towers later, 1 lying president and the Patriot Act later, 0 weapons of mass destruction later, and the unemployment rate is greater, and healthcare is still getting higher, and they got you worried about the Taliban and Al-Qaeda? Post 9/11, the world preoccupied with Bin Laden, but I fear for the wrong reasons. They demonize with global democracy rhetoric and slander via media propaganda. They call him a terrorist, just fronting revolution. But is it beyond our scope to see him searching for a solution to end America's world arrogance, avarice, and imperialism? And how is it after the towers dropped, there's no more social schisms? American blacks that couldn't see the day because of the night of their own domestic plight now want to merge with the majority and unite and wave flags and don red, white, and blue. Forget it being patriotic, forget it being symbolic. We oppressed under U.S. politics and sour social economics. So why is it that we're so quick to fight the Taliban and send crusades to Afghanistan, but here at home we lay down and stay mute under Bush's hand?
Yeah, I've been looking around and I'm seeing a lot of veterans and a lot of combat veterans and the families of veterans out here. A few minutes ago I was outside and there was some cats telling me that there's a lot of dirty hippies here having an anti-war demonstration, but I don't think anybody's more qualified to tell people what's wrong with war than veterans and combat veterans. And by the way, I was in the 82nd Airborne.
Several of my relatives have suffered mental and physical injury as a result of their service in the military. So I stand in solidarity with the many families here who have served in the military or who have loved ones who have been killed or injured by this senseless war in Iraq and many of the wars that this country has waged against the rest of the world.
Today it has two anniversaries. One is the second anniversary of the so-called shock and awe. Today is also the first anniversary of when my son's deployment began in Iraq. In 16 days, my family
will suffer the 1-year death anniversary of Casey.
On March 23rd, my life changed forever. A change that no one could do anything about. All I have left of my son is memories. And all I have left of this date is horrible memories that play over and over every day of my life. He was fighting for something that he never thought was true, and neither did we.
My brother died doing his job, and he was a hopeful human being for the 30 years that we had him. He had a job to do, and he felt it was his responsibility to go, and I thought that was a noble decision for him to make. He was working for the Iraq Survey Group. He died looking for weapons of mass destruction.
I served in Iraq for a year with the military police company doing patrols, doing convoy escorts. Back home, while the media and the government was telling my family and all of you that we were over there for liberty and we were over there for freedom, I was burning fuel trucks belonging to Halliburton, destroying an asset in front of crowds, hundreds of Iraqi people who didn't have fuel, who didn't have food or health care, whose lives were the most destitute and desperate that I've ever seen in my life. We're being told things are getting better, but they're not. Things continue to get worse. The violence is escalating, and we're not shown the over 1,500 coffins that have been coming home to the United States from Iraq. We're not shown the suffering of the Iraqi people, which continues to mount, which continues to get worse every day as they face increased violence and chaos. The occupation is the problem. It is not the solution.
What would an insurgency be without an occupying force to fight? How many sympathizers would they be able to get if they were just killing their own people and fighting no one? They get sympathy from the everyday citizens, the people in their country. They're able to carry out these attacks and do these things, A, because you have young men in that country who can't find jobs. Same thing in this country when young men can't find jobs. They find other things to do with their time. They become susceptible to violent behavior. You know, if we didn't have contractors over there, maybe those young men could have those jobs.
After George Bush, quote, won the election on November 2nd, he said, this is a mandate for the war in Iraq. And he sent our troops into Fallujah to destroy the entire city of 300,000 people. And we said, not in our name, and we collected $650,000 worth of materials and took it to the women and the children of Fallujah.
I always said when they had that vote with all that turnout, why was there not a question at the bottom, a referendum, do you want these troops here? If your intention was to be serving them, then why not put that at the bottom of the thing and let them say it now? If all of them overwhelmingly said yes, would I be here today? So, I mean, at every turn, I try to give it the benefit of the doubt, the benefit of the intentions. I try to look at both sides. And at every turn, I've been let down. And so I can't believe in it anymore.
I don't speak for every military family. I speak for my own. I speak for grieving families of fallen soldiers who are made to feel ashamed because they don't accept that ever-changing reasons being given about what their soldiers were fighting for in Iraq. I am asking, is this the best way to use our military to protect our national security? We should be able to question the integrity of spending $40 million on a lavish inauguration when we have soldiers halfway around the world at war just trying to earn enough money for college or to support their families.
And not only are people of color and poor communities recruited by the economic draft and disproportionately die on distant battlefields, but their families are dying in the ghettos and in poor communities because we don't have health care, because we don't have jobs, because millions of people are languishing under bridges on boxes because they don't have a home home to sleep in. This war is wrong, this war is destroying us, and this war must end right now.
My children are hungry, they're sick from the heat, while I pick the crop for others to eat. And you take my money, you think I don't see, you use it to fire on women like me. My children are ragged, their bodies are bare, while I sew the clothes for others to wear. And you take my money, you think I don't see, you use it to fire on women like me.
It is unconscionable and morally repugnant that billions and billions of dollars are poured into the war effort with very little and being devoted to the care of these men and women upon their return. Regardless of your stance on this war, we are obligated by all that is right and good to, to truly not give just adequate, but the best of care.
We're here to tell all of them in Fort Bragg, in Camp Lejeune where I was stationed, Pope Air Force Base, all around the country and around the world, that we will stand by them and fight for them. And that is what we are here to do, and we will continue to fight until this war is over and every last veteran is given the care that was promised to them when they joined the U.S. military.
Imagine you are a soldier and you went to Iraq to find these weapons that they said could reach the shores of your nation where your children sleep, only to find out that they never existed. And now you come home frustrated to tell your story to a nation that tells you you volunteered, so stop whining. These soldiers risked their lives to protect private contractors making 3 times their salaries while they watched the Iraqi men who they came there with the intention of helping struggle to find employment in their own country. I can't remain silent on these issues, slap a yellow ribbon on my car, and call it supporting my troops.
We are a country divided. You know, I don't know how it looks. I don't know how it looks, you know, from overseas, but we're very much a country divided, and we're struggling to try and figure out our way. A lot of what's going on, you know, I don't demonize people and say, oh, well, they're evil, that's why this is going on. A lot of this is fear, you know, about what happened. It is about people's fear about what happened on September 11th, and they're just so scared. And when you're scared, you do irrational things, and you act out, and it's just time for us to find a constructive way to deal with what happened here in our country.
I'm the mother of Corporal Jeffrey Michael Lucy. Yesterday would have been his 24th birthday. I say would have been because Jeff died on June 22nd at the age of 23. He chose to end his life after struggling with the demons of post-traumatic stress for several months after his return from Iraq. What did our son die for? We have yet to receive an answer we are comfortable with. There were no weapons of mass destruction. Yet this was used to promote fear and justify the actions taken by our government. Some may say Jeff returned unharmed, but the young man that came home without obvious physical wounds was destroyed by the dark, hidden pain of the emotional cost of this war. How many other Jeffreys will this conflict claim? And again, the question is why?
Whether Democrat or Republican, be you from a red state or blue, let not another parent find their child as we found ours, seeking relief from such horrific, unmanageable torment. It was as I cradled him and took the hose from around his neck, I began crying out, why, and have yet to stop.
Now rifles and guns won't win any wars unless you've got something that's worth fighting for. But you take my children. You think I don't see. You use them to fire on women like me.
I think that even if you give the argument of, well, we were there to give them their freedom, I would say, well, then why not come home and leave the Iraqi people with that impression? The longer we're there, the less they're going to trust that that's what we were there for. And it's time for us to come home.
We are here to say loud and clear, we love the U.S. troops, and that's why we want them back home. We are here to say loud and clear, we love the Iraqis, and that's why we want the U.S. troops to come home.
Recently, Joseph Lieberman and John McCain introduced legislation to put into law U.S. policy to spread democracy around the world. Lieberman had the nerve to say that this policy is the extension of the promise begun in our Declaration of Independence. How stupid and ridiculous. Well, he needs to read our Declaration again. Our Declaration says, and I'm paraphrasing, the governments are instituted among people and derive just powers from the consent of the governed. And if a government is not working for the people have the right to abolish it and institute new government, organizing in a way that to them seems more likely to affect their safety and happiness. Nowhere does it say democracy is the path to freedom. Self-determination and respect for human rights and all humanity is the path to freedom. This legislation and the war in Iraq is an obvious attempt to remake the world in our own image. It is global manifest destiny, a bid for world economic control. This is not the definition of freedom. This is the definition of imperialism and tyranny. It is not why our sons and daughters, mothers and fathers, aunts and uncles, friends and lovers serve. They serve to defend our Constitution and to protect us. It is clear to me, it is clear to you, and we are standing in solidarity with hundreds of communities across the nation to make it clear to our government. The best way to support our troops is to end the occupation and bring them home now. Power to the peaceful. Thank you.
Walk together, children, and don't you get weary. Walk together until this war is over. Walk together until racism is over. Walk together until there's peace all over the land, and we can live together as brothers and sisters. Thank you. God bless you.
And they cover hate with faith, and they justify genocide. Down to another little
husband's not going to get up on a stage and speak at a rally, but that's what he has a wife for. I can do that.